The human sat at a small wooden table in the center of the alien market, his stomach growling loudly. His name was Daniel, and he had traveled many days across dusty roads and crowded spaceports just to reach this place. For days, he had eaten nothing but dry rations, the kind that stuck to the throat and gave no real comfort. Today was different. Today, he finally had a real meal. Steam rose from the bowl in front of him, carrying a smell that made his mouth water. It was a stew of meat and spices, thick and rich, the kind that filled the body with warmth. The market around him was loud. Aliens of many shapes and colors moved between stalls. Traders shouted prices. Guards walked in groups and children darted through the crowds. Daniel was tired, but the meal in front of him was a blessing. He picked up the spoon slowly, ready to take the first bite, but then something quick moved beside him. A shadow, a small hand, rough and trembling, darted forward and grabbed his bowl. Daniel's reflexes were faster than he expected. His hand shot out and he caught the thief by the wrist. The bowl almost tipped over, but he held it steady. Gasps rose from the nearby tables. A few merchants laughed, pointing at the scene. Daniel looked down, expecting to see a pickpocket or some bold street kid. Instead, he saw her. She was small and thin, her skin pale with a faint silver glow. Her dark hair was tangled, her clothes little more than torn rags. Her large, glowing eyes stared back at him in shock. The alien girl looked no older than 16. "Let go," she hissed, trying to pull her hand back. Her voice was soft but sharp, like a cornered animal. Daniel did not let go. He tightened his grip just enough to stop her from escaping. Around him, laughter grew. A fat merchant shouted, "The thief is caught! The thief is caught!" Guards turned their heads but did not move. To them, this was entertainment, not justice. The girl struggled harder, but her strength was nothing against his. She was light as a feather. He could feel her bones beneath. Her thin skin. She looked hungry. Desperate. Daniel's anger faded quickly, replaced by something else. Pity, curiosity, maybe even guilt. "Why are you stealing my food?" Daniel asked, his voice calm. The girl froze. Her glowing eyes filled with something more than fear. Shame. She lowered her head, her lips trembling. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, in a broken whisper, she answered, "Because we have not eaten in days." Her voice cracked. Daniel blinked. Around them, the crowd's laughter died down. A few whispered. Some shook their heads, but no one stepped forward. The guards turned away again, pretending not to hear. Daniel's grip loosened. He looked closer at her. She was trembling, not from fear alone, but from weakness. Her stomach growled so loudly he could hear it. She was not stealing for greed, she was stealing for survival. He released her wrist. The girl pulled her hand back, clutching it against her chest like a wounded bird. She stared at him, confused. She had expected anger. "Maybe punishment, not kindness. Sit," Daniel said softly, pointing to the empty chair across from him. The girl hesitated. Her glowing eyes darted around the market, waiting for someone to shout or strike her. When no one did, she slowly sat, down, still ready to run at the first sign of danger. Daniel pushed the bowl toward her. Her hand shook as she reached for it. At first she hesitated, as if she did not believe it was real. Then she pulled the bowl close and began to eat quickly, spoon after spoon. The stew dripped down her chin. She did not care. She was too hungry. Daniel watched in silence. His stomach, still empty but his heart heavy. Each bite she took told him a story, of cold nights, empty bellies, and silent tears. He did not need her to explain. He could see it in her eyes. When half the bowl was gone, she slowed down. Her eyes filled with water, and she placed the spoon back into the bowl. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, embarrassed. I shouldn't," she whispered. "This is yours." Daniel leaned forward, his voice was steady. "No, it was mine. Now it is yours." Her lip trembled, and for a moment, Daniel thought she might cry. She quickly looked away, hiding her face. From the corner of his eye, Daniel noticed people watching them. Some shook their heads. Some muttered that he was foolish to give food to a thief, but Daniel did not care. Something about the girl stirred something deep in him. "You said we?" Daniel asked carefully. "Who else is hungry?" The girl's shoulders stiffened, her glowing eyes darted back to him. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Finally," she whispered, so low he almost didn't hear. "My little ones," she said. "They are waiting for me." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had caught a thief, but he no longer saw a criminal. In front of him sat a sister, a protector, someone carrying a weight too heavy for her small frame. He leaned back slowly. The stew was gone now, but the story had only just begun. And as Daniel looked at the girl, he knew this chance meeting would change everything. Daniel walked beside the alien girl through the narrow streets of the market. His stomach was still empty, but his mind was heavy with questions. He had given her the meal, but the way she had spoken, that broken whisper about little ones, still echoed in his ears. The market around them grew louder as evening came. Lanterns lit up, glowing in many colors, merchants shouted their final offers, and guards stood near the gates. But Daniel barely noticed any of it. His eyes stayed on the girl. She walked fast, as if afraid he would change his mind and leave her behind. Her steps were light but restless. Every now and then she turned her head, checking if he was still there. Her torn clothes flapped in the breeze, and her bare feet left faint marks on the dusty road. Finally, Daniel spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "What is your name?" The girl stopped for a moment. Her glowing eyes widened. She opened her mouth, then closed it again as if she had forgotten what it felt like to be asked such a simple question. After a long pause, she whispered, "Lyra?" Daniel nodded. "Lyra," he repeated softly. "Why didn't you ask for help instead of stealing?" Her body stiffened. She turned her head away quickly as if his words had cut her. For a moment she stayed silent. Then, in a voice so low and cracked that it almost broke, she said, "Because no one listens. No one cares." Her words were like a blade, cutting through the air. Daniel felt them sink deep. He wanted to ask more, but before he could, she kept speaking. Her voice trembled, but now that she had started, she could not stop. "They call us useless," Lyra whispered. "They say we are nothing. They laugh when we beg. They spit at us. Guards chase us away. Merchants throw stones. Even the kind faces turn away." Her words poured out one after another. She did not look at him. Her eyes stared at the ground. Glowing faintly in the dark, her small fists clenched as she walked. I tried so many times," she continued. "I asked for work. They said I was too weak. I begged for scraps. They told me to disappear. My brothers cry at night. They ask me for food, but I have nothing to give. I lie to them. I say tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow is always worse." Her voice cracked again, and this time it did not sound like words, but like something breaking inside her. Daniel stopped walking. His chest tightened. The noise of the market faded away in his ears. All he could hear was the trembling voice of a starving girl. Lyra kept walking a few steps ahead. Then she realized he had stopped. She turned back, and for the first time, Daniel saw her eyes clearly. They were not only glowing, they were wet with tears. "I stole your meal," she said, her voice trembling. "Because I had no choice if I returned empty again. They might not wake tomorrow." Her words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Daniel could not move. He stood frozen, staring at her. He had seen hunger before, but never like this. Not the hunger of a thief, but the hunger of someone who carried the weight of others on her small shoulders. Lyra wiped her face quickly with her sleeve, embarrassed. "You should leave me now," she whispered. "I will find a way. I always do." But Daniel shook his head slowly. "No," he said firmly. His voice was low, steady, but filled with something she had not heard in a long time. "Resolve." She blinked at him, confused. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." Daniel stepped closer, his eyes locked with hers. "Because I see you," he said, "and I hear you. That is enough." Lyra's lips parted, but no sound came. She looked away quickly. Ashamed of her tears, she tried to hide them. But Daniel had already seen around them. The market lights flickered. A guard passed by, giving Daniel a strange look for walking with a ragged alien girl. Some merchants muttered, shaking their heads. Daniel ignored them. He took a slow breath. "Take me to them," he said. Lyra's head snapped up. Her glowing eyes widened. "What?" "Your brothers," Daniel said. "Take me to them. If they are hungry, I want to see them." She shook her head quickly, fear rising in her eyes. "No, you can't. It's too dangerous. If people find out, if the guards follow—" Daniel raised a hand, stopping her. "I don't care," he said. His voice was steady, unshaken. "Show me." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her breathing fast, her hands trembling. She searched his face for some trick, some lie, but all she found was truth. Finally, her shoulders dropped, and she nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "All right." They turned away from the main road and slipped into the shadows of the alleys. The noise of the market faded behind them. The air grew colder, the streets narrower. Broken walls rose on both sides, trash scattered across the ground. Lyra walked ahead, her small frame almost swallowed by the darkness. Daniel followed close behind, his heart beat heavy. He did not know what he would find, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever waited for him at the end of this road, he could not turn back now, because the broken voice of one alien girl had already changed him. The alley grew darker with every step. Daniel followed Lyra closely, his boots crunched on broken stone, while her bare feet made almost no sound. The market's noise was gone now, replaced by silence and the occasional drip of water from pipes above. The air smelled of rust and smoke. Lyra moved like someone who had done this path many times. She turned corners without hesitation, always checking behind her. Her glowing eyes shone faintly in the shadows, guiding Daniel through the maze of ruined walls. Finally, she stopped in front of an old storage hut. The metal door was bent, half off its hinges. She pressed her hand against it gently, then glanced back at Daniel. Her voice was low, trembling. "Promise me, you won't hurt them." Daniel looked at her, his face steady. "I promise." She nodded slowly and pushed the door open. The rusty hinge creaked, and Daniel stepped inside. At first, it was almost too dark to see. The smell of damp wood and dust filled the room. Then his eyes adjusted and he froze. In the corner, 3 small shapes huddled together on the floor. They were children, even younger than Lyra. Their bodies were thin, their cheeks hollow. Their skin, pale like hers, glowed faintly under the dim light leaking through cracks in the roof. The youngest, no older than 5, stirred at the sound of the door. His eyes lit up when he saw Lyra. "Sister!" he cried weakly. His voice was high but faint, as if even speaking drained his strength. The other 2 sat up slowly. One coughed so hard his small chest shook. The other rubbed his eyes. Blinking at the sight of Daniel, Lyra dropped to her knees. Beside them, she pulled the youngest into her arms, hugging him tightly. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here now." Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen hungry children before, but never like this. Their bones showed beneath their skin. Their eyes were too large for their faces. Their clothes were scraps. He felt a lump rise in his throat. The middle child stared at him, his voice soft. "Who is he?" Lyra hesitated, then looked back at Daniel. Her lips trembled. "He gave me food." The children's eyes widened. They looked at Daniel not with fear, but with hope. Fragile and uncertain, Daniel knelt down slowly, careful not to frighten them. "My name is Daniel," he said softly, "and I'm here to help." The youngest reached out a tiny hand. Touching Daniel's sleeve, his fingers were so small, so weak. Daniel gently covered the boy's hand with his own. The boy smiled faintly, then his stomach growled loudly. The sound hit Daniel harder than any weapon could. He stood quickly, anger boiling in his chest, not at them, but at the world that left them like this. He turned to Lyra. "How long have they been starving?" Lyra lowered her head, shame covering her face. "Too long," she whispered. "I give them what I can steal. Sometimes scraps from the trash, sometimes nothing at all." Her voice broke. I try every day, but it's never enough. Daniel took a deep breath. His hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to shout, to break something, but he forced himself to stay calm. The children were watching him, and they needed hope, not fear. He looked around the hut. It was almost empty. Just a few blankets, a broken lantern, and a small cup. No food, no water, nothing. Daniel knelt back down and spoke softly. Listen to me, he said. His eyes moved from Lyra to the children. You will not go hungry tonight. Not while I am here. The youngest smiled weakly. The middle one coughed again, and the eldest, who looked about 10, asked, But how? You don't live here? You don't know us. Daniel's voice was steady. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you need help, and I can give it. Lyra's glowing eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. You don't understand. If the guards catch you helping us, they will punish you. They will punish us too. No one risks themselves for outcasts like us. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, firm but gentle. Maybe no one has before, he said. But I will. I cannot walk away from this. Lyra stared at him, her lips trembling. She wanted to argue, to tell him it was impossible, but something in his eyes stopped her. It was not pity. It was determination. The children leaned against her, one resting his head on her arm, another holding her hand tightly. They were shadows of what children should be, weak and fading. But, in this moment, they were alive, watching Daniel with fragile trust. For a long moment, silence filled the hut. The only sound was the faint breathing of the little ones. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice low but filled with fire. Tomorrow, we find food for all of you, not scraps, not stolen bits, real food, enough for days. Lyra's eyes widened. How? She whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I will find a way. The youngest yawned, curling against his sister. Within minutes, his small body gave in to sleep. The other two followed, their tired eyes closing, their breath soft and uneven. Lyra covered them gently with the thin blanket. Her glowing eyes shimmered in the dark as she whispered, Thank you, Daniel. Daniel sat back against the wall, his thoughts heavy. He knew this was only the beginning. He had stepped into a shadowed world, one where the weak were crushed and forgotten. But now, with these children before him, he felt something, burning inside, a promise, a vow. He would not let them starve again, not while he still breathed. The night was long inside the broken hut. Daniel sat against the wall with his eyes half open, listening to the soft breathing of the children. The smallest one murmured in his sleep. The middle one coughed from time to time, and Lyra kept watch. Sitting cross-legged near them, she had not touched her own eyes with sleep. Her glowing gaze stayed sharp, always checking the door, always alert. Daniel saw the weight on her shoulders. He wondered how long she had lived like this, a girl forced to become a mother, a protector, a fighter. When dawn's light finally slipped through the cracks in the roof, Daniel stood. His back ached from the hard ground, but his mind was clear. He had made his decision in the silence of the night. Lyra noticed his movement. You should go, she whispered. The guards patrol early. If they see you here, they will think you're one of us. Daniel shook his head. I'm not leaving, he said. His voice was steady. His eyes fell on the children still curled together under the thin blanket. Not until I know they are safe. Lyra frowned. Safe? There is no safe for us. Her voice was bitter, tired. We survive one day at a time, that's all. Daniel crouched down beside her. That's not enough, he said. Children should not live like this. Her lips trembled. She wanted to argue, but the truth in his words cut too deep. She lowered her eyes, ashamed of the life she had been forced to give them. Daniel took a deep breath. I have some credits left, he said. Not much, but enough for food. Her head snapped. No, she hissed. If the merchants see you buying for us, they will know. They will tell the guards you will be marked. You don't understand this place. It swallows the kind-hearted. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then let it, he said. Better, me than them. The strength in his voice made her chest tighten. For so long, no one had ever spoken for them. Everyone told her to hide, to beg, to steal. But this human spoke as if their lives were worth more than the laws that hunted them. She stared at him, almost afraid. Why? She whispered. Why would you risk yourself for us? You don't know me. You don't know them. Daniel looked into her glowing eyes. Because I do know, he said quietly. I know what hunger feels like. I know what it means to have no one. When I look at them, I see myself. I can't turn away. Her throat tightened. For the first time in years, her heart wanted to believe. But fear pulled her back. If they catch you, they'll throw you in the pits, she whispered. Or worse. Daniel stood tall, his shadow stretching across the small room. Then I'll face it, he said. But I will not let them starve. The children stirred at his voice. The eldest, a boy with sharp eyes despite his thin frame, sat up. Sister? He asked softly. What's happening? Lyra brushed his hair gently. Nothing, go back to sleep, she said. But the boy shook his head. He looked at Daniel, his gaze filled with cautious hope. Are you going to help us? He asked. Daniel crouched beside him. Yes, he said, simply. I am. The boy studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded once as if his young heart decided to trust. He lay back down and closed his eyes. The choice was made. Daniel felt it like a fire in his chest. He turned to Lyra. Come with me, he said. We'll get food together. Her eyes widened. No, if they see me. They already see you as a thief, Daniel cut in. But if I walk beside you, they will think twice. They may hate you, but they will fear me. Lyra shook her head, torn between fear and the tiny spark of hope she could not kill. She wanted to refuse, but her siblings' hollow faces filled her mind. She finally whispered, All right. Daniel gave her a firm nod. Together they stepped outside. The morning sun washed the alley in pale gold, but the shadows still clung to the broken walls. Lyra pulled her ragged shawl tighter around herself, while Daniel walked tall, his presence strong and steady. As they moved toward the market, whispers followed them. Merchants eyed them suspiciously. Guards narrowed their eyes. But Daniel did not slow. His stride was calm, deliberate, unshaken. At a food stall, the merchant sneered when he saw Lyra. Back again, rat? He spat. Didn't I tell you last time? Daniel's hand landed on the counter, his voice cut through like steel. I'm buying. The merchant blinked at him, thrown off by the human's sharp tone. For her? He asked, disgust dripping from his words. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes hard. For them, he said. Now name your price. The merchant tried to laugh it off, but the weight in Daniel's gaze silenced him. He named a price, far too high. Daniel paid it without a word. He gathered bread, dried meat, and fruit into a sack. He turned and placed it in Lyra's arms. Her hands shook as she held it. Her lips parted in shock. For your brothers, Daniel said softly. For a moment, the market seemed to hold its breath. Lyra looked at him, eyes shimmering. She wanted to speak, to say something, but her throat locked. She simply nodded, clutching the food tightly against her chest. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. This is only the beginning, he said. And in that moment, the choice was no longer just his. It was theirs. Together they had taken the first step against a world that wanted them forgotten. The sack of food felt heavy in Lyra's arms, not because of the weight, but because of what it meant. She clutched it tightly against her chest, afraid someone would tear it away. Daniel walked beside her, his presence strong. His eyes scanned the market as if daring anyone to make a move. At first, the crowd only whispered. Some muttered about the human wasting good credits on vermin. Others laughed and called it foolish, but then the whispers turned sharper, louder. Soon, all eyes were on them. A merchant slammed his fist on his stall. That thief again, he shouted, pointing at Lyra, and this time she has help. The words spread like fire. Guards at the far end of the square turned their heads. Their armor gleamed under the sun and their long spears caught the light. One barked an order, and 3 started walking toward them. Lyra's heart pounded. Her grip on the sack tightened. "We need to run," she whispered, panic in her voice. Daniel's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. He glanced at the guards closing in. "Not yet," he said calmly. "Walk. Don't run unless you have to." But the crowd was turning. People stepped closer, their eyes filled with hate. A few threw rotten fruit and shouted insults. Lyra flinched as one hit her shoulder. Daniel moved quickly, shielding her with his body. The fruit splattered harmlessly against his coat. The guards pushed through the crowd. Their voices boomed. "Stop right there! Hand over the thief!" Daniel stopped walking. His eyes locked on the nearest guard. His voice was calm but strong. "She's not a thief. I paid for this food." The guard sneered. "That doesn't matter. Outcasts are forbidden from trade. You broke the law, human, now move aside." Lyra's hands trembled, her whole body shook. She whispered desperately, "Please, Daniel, go, leave me. They'll only hurt you if you stay." But Daniel shook his head slowly. "I told you already. Lyra, I'm not leaving." The guards advanced, the crowd cheering them on. Daniel grabbed her arm gently. "Now," he whispered, "run." Together they bolted, weaving through the market stalls. The crowd roared in anger. The guards shouted and gave chase. Their boots thundered against the stone ground. Lyra clutched the sack as if her life depended on it. Daniel's longer strides kept them ahead. He grabbed her hand, pulling her around corners, dodging merchants, knocking over baskets of fruit and barrels of water to slow the pursuers. "Faster," Daniel urged. His breath was steady despite the chase. Lyra's feet burned against the ground. Her legs screamed in pain, but she did not stop. Not while the sack was in her arms, not while Daniel pulled her forward. Behind them, the guards shouted, "Catch them! Don't let them escape!" They turned down a narrow alley. The walls closed in tight. Daniel glanced back. 3 guards were already entering behind them. He spotted a stack of crates leaning against a wall. With a quick shove, he toppled them over. The crates crashed. Into the alley, blocking the way, the guards cursed, climbing over the mess. But the delay bought them precious seconds. Lyra gasped, her voice breaking. "They won't stop. They'll hunt us until... they'll stop." Daniel interrupted, firmly, "If we don't give them a choice." His tone was sharp, his eyes burning with determination. Lyra had never seen anyone look at the guards like that. Not with fear, but with defiance. They reached the edge of the market where the alleys opened into the outer streets. Daniel spotted a small cart loaded with empty barrels. Without hesitation, he tipped it over, sending the barrels rolling across the path. People scattered in chaos, guards stumbled, "Keep moving," Daniel shouted, pulling Lyra along. But more guards were coming from the other side. Their armor clanked as they spread out, cutting off the escape. Daniel stopped in his tracks, breathing hard. His eyes darted around quickly, searching for a way out. Then he spotted it. A narrow stairway climbing up the side of a crumbling building. "This way." He barked, dragging Lyra toward it. She hesitated, glancing at the high steps. "I can't." "Yes, you can," Daniel said sharply. "Climb." She obeyed, clutching the sack with one arm, pulling herself up with the other. Daniel stayed. Close behind, his strong hands pushed her upward when she slipped. Below them, guards swarmed the base of the stairway, shouting threats. They reached the roof, the wind sweeping across the broken tiles. From up here, the city stretched out like a maze, smoke rising from chimneys, banners flapping in the wind. Lyra collapsed onto her knees, panting. Her heart raced. So fast she thought it might burst. Daniel pulled her back to her feet. "Not yet, we keep moving." They ran across the rooftops, tiles cracking under their steps. The guards tried to follow but slipped and stumbled. Their armor slowed them. Daniel moved fast, his hand steady on Lyra's arm to guide her. At one gap between buildings, Lyra froze. The drop below was too far. Her legs trembled. "I can't," she cried. Daniel looked at her, his voice strong and steady. "Yes, you can. Trust me." He jumped first, landing hard but steady on the other side. He held out his hand. "Lyra, jump." She clutched the sack tightly, her eyes wide with fear. The guards were climbing onto the roof behind her. Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. Now! With a cry, she leapt. Her feet barely made it across. Daniel caught her hand, pulling her up before she could slip. She crashed into his chest, shaking, but safe. They ran again, finally leaving the guards far behind. The noise of the chase faded as they disappeared into another set of narrow alleys. At last they stopped in a quiet courtyard hidden by tall walls and broken statues. Lyra collapsed against the wall, her chest heaving. Daniel leaned beside her, sweat dripping down his face. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of their breathing filled the air. Then Lyra whispered, her voice trembling but filled with awe. "Why are you doing this? Why risk everything for me?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes fierce but gentle. "Because no one should be hunted for trying to keep their family alive," he said. "Not while I can fight beside them." Her throat tightened, tears welled. In her glowing eyes, for the first time in years, she did not feel alone. The courtyard was quiet. Only the faint sound of distant footsteps and the echo of shouting guards carried through the alleys. Lyra sat against the wall, clutching the sack of food as if it were her very soul. Her breaths came in short, sharp gasps, sweat mixing with dust on her pale skin. Daniel crouched beside her, his own chest rising and falling steadily. Though they had escaped, his mind remained alert. His eyes scanned the shadows, always watching for danger, but when he looked at Lyra, something softer filled his gaze. "You're safe for now," he said firmly. "They won't find us here." Lyra gave a shaky laugh, bitter and broken. "Safe," she repeated. "We don't know what that word means anymore." Daniel tilted his head, studying her. He could see it. The weight she carried was not just hunger, not just fear. It was something deeper, something older. "Tell me," he said gently. "What really happened? Why are you and your brothers alone in this city?" Her glowing eyes flickered toward him, then away. For a long time she said nothing. Only the sound of her siblings' weak coughs, echoing in her memory, filled the silence. Finally, she drew a sharp breath. "My family is gone," she whispered. Daniel stayed still, waiting, his eyes locked on hers. "They weren't thieves," she continued, her voice trembling. "They weren't beggars. We had a small home. My father worked the mines. My mother cleaned the merchant halls. It was hard, but we survived." Her lips shook as the next words left her mouth. "Until the Lord came." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "The Lord?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Lord Khazar, he controls this district. Everyone pays him, even the merchants who laugh and drink. They pay him. If you can't, he takes everything, and if you still have nothing to give." Her voice cracked. "He takes lives." Daniel clenched his fists. His jaw tightened. He could already picture the kind of man she spoke of, rich in cruelty, fat with power, the kind who crushed the weak just to show he could. Lyra hugged the sack tighter as if it were her only shield. "My father fell sick, he couldn't work. The mines broke his body. He coughed blood every night. My mother begged for mercy. She went to the Lord's men. She offered to clean their halls for free, but it wasn't enough." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. "One night his soldiers came. They dragged my father outside. My brothers cried. I screamed. My mother tried to protect him. They beat her down, and then—" She choked, covering her mouth, but forced herself to continue. "And then they killed him right there in front of us, and when my mother refused to leave his side, they killed her too." Daniel's chest tightened. Rage burned hot in his veins. His hands trembled with the urge to strike something, but he forced himself to stay still. His eyes never left Lyra. She lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I took my brothers and ran. We hid in the ruins. We stole when we could. We begged when we dared. But the guards always chased us. No one would help, no one dared. Everyone is afraid of Khazar." The courtyard seemed colder now. Daniel could almost see the shadows of that night in her eyes. He could hear the pain in every word. "That's why they hate us," Lyra whispered. "Not because we steal, but because we remind them of what they fear. If they look at us, they remember Khazar's power, so they turn away. They'd rather spit at us than admit they're afraid." Daniel took a slow breath. His voice was low but steady. And you've carried this alone, all this time. Her lips trembled. She gave a small, broken nod. Every day I tell my brothers it will be better, but I know it's a lie. I know one day I won't be able to find food and they'll... She stopped, her voice cracking. They'll fade away just like father and mother. Daniel leaned forward, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. No, he said firmly. His eyes burned with fire. I won't let that happen. Lyra blinked, startled. You can't fight him, she whispered. He has soldiers, weapons, power. You're just one man. Daniel's grip on her shoulder tightened slightly. One man is enough when he refuses to bow, he said. I've faced worse than soldiers. I've survived. Worse than hunger. If Khazar thinks he can crush children and call it power, then he's already weaker than he knows. Her glowing eyes widened. She stared at him, searching for doubt. But there was none. Only raw determination carved into his face. You don't understand, she said again, though her voice was softer now. People who fight him disappear. Sometimes whole families vanish overnight. No one dares speak his name too loud. Daniel straightened, his fists clenched at his sides. Then maybe it's time someone did, he said. Silence filled the courtyard. Lyra looked down at her trembling hands. For so long she had believed hope was dangerous. But sitting here, beside this human who spoke with such unshaken strength, she felt something stir inside her chest, something she thought had died with her parents. Hope. Her lips parted, a whisper escaping before she could stop it. Why do you care so much? Daniel looked at her, his voice steady. Because no one cared for me once, and I swore, if I ever had the chance, I'd be the one who did. Her throat tightened. Her tears fell freely now. But for the first time, they were not only tears of sorrow. They carried something else. Relief. For the first time, she did not feel alone. The night air was sharp and cold. Daniel walked through the broken streets with Lyra at his side. The sack of food was hidden under her shawl. Every step echoed too loudly. Every shadow felt heavy. They both knew it was only a matter of time before Khazar's men came looking. Daniel stopped at the corner of a crumbling wall. He could hear the faint clatter of armor in the distance. The guards were searching, their voices carried through the night. The human and the thief. Find them. Lyra's heart pounded, her hands trembled. We should hide, she whispered. If they catch you. Daniel shook his head, his jaw set. No more running, he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with fire. If we hide, they'll just keep coming. If we fight now, we give them a reason to stop. Before Lyra could answer, torches flared at the end of the street. A group of armored guards marched forward, their spears pointed, their faces hard. Behind them, a heavy carriage rolled into view. At its center sat a broad figure draped in red silk and gold chains. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her glowing eyes widened. It's him, she whispered. Khazar. Daniel's fists clenched. He had expected soldiers, but not the Lord himself. Khazar's face was round, cruel. His lips curled into a sneer as he spotted them. So, Khazar boomed, his voice carrying across the street to the human who thinks himself a hero. He laughed loud and mocking. And the rat girl who should have starved long ago. Lyra flinched at the words. Daniel stepped forward, shielding her from Khazar's gaze. His voice cut through the night, calm but sharp. You kill families for debts, you starve children. To feed your greed, that ends now. The guards laughed. Khazar's fat belly shook as he laughed too. Ends. Foolish human. I own this city. I own the lives in it. You are nothing. He waved his jeweled hand. Kill him, and take the girl. The guards advanced, their spears glinting. Lyra's breath quickened. She pulled at Daniel's arm. Please don't. They'll kill you. You can't fight them all. But Daniel's eyes never wavered. He turned his head slightly toward her. His voice was low, but strong enough for her to hear. Trust me. The first guard lunged. Daniel moved fast. His hand shot out. Grabbing the spear shaft with a sharp twist, he wrenched it free and swung it in one smooth motion. The guard fell back with a cry. The others hesitated, shocked by his strength. Daniel stepped forward, his stance solid. "If any of you touch her, you won't walk away." The crowd that had gathered gasped. They had never seen anyone stand against Khazar's soldiers, not like this. 2 more guards attacked. Daniel ducked one spear and slammed the butt of his own into the guard's chest. The man toppled with a grunt. He spun the weapon in his hands, blocking the second strike. His eyes blazed with fury but also with purpose. Behind him, Lyra stared in shock. For the first time in her life, someone fought for her, not against her. Khazar's laughter faded, replaced with anger. His voice roared, "Useless fools, kill him!" More soldiers rushed forward, but the street was narrow. They tripped over each other. Daniel used the tight space. He struck fast, knocking weapons aside, sending armored bodies crashing to the ground. He fought with the precision of a man who had known hardship all his life, but he was only one man. His breath grew heavy, his arms ached. A spear tip grazed his side, warm blood staining his shirt. Still, he did not fall. Lyra's fear turned to fire. She grabbed a loose stone from the ground and hurled it at a guard's head. The soldier stumbled, giving Daniel an opening. He struck hard, dropping the man to his knees. For the first time, the crowd began to cheer, softly at first, then louder. The human fights Khazar's men." The guards hesitated. The fear they once commanded was cracking. Khazar's face twisted in rage, his voice bellowed, "Enough, bring them both to me." Daniel stood tall, blood dripping from his side, his eyes locked on Khazar. "No," he growled, his voice cut through the chaos. "You'll never touch them again." The words struck like thunder. The people around them, long silent under Khazar's rule, raised their voices. They shouted in anger, throwing scraps, stones, anything they could. The tide was turning. Khazar's sneer faltered. His carriage pulled back as the crowd surged forward. His guards, now surrounded, began to retreat. Fear spread through their ranks. Daniel dropped the spear, his chest heaving. He turned to Lyra, who clutched the sack of food tight against her heart. Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. You faced him," she whispered, awe filling her voice. "No one ever dared, but you. You stood for us." Daniel smiled faintly despite the pain. "You're not alone anymore," he said. She stepped closer, trembling. Her voice was soft but strong. "Then from this day you are part of us." The children appeared at the edge of the alley, their small faces lit with wonder. They ran to Lyra, hugging her legs. Their eyes lifted to Daniel, wide with trust. For the first time, he felt something heavy ease in his chest, the weight he had carried for so long. The loneliness, the hunger, the silence. It melted in their gaze, and in that broken city under the cold night sky, a bond was forged. Not of blood, not of law, but of choice. A human, an alien girl, and her brothers, bound together by survival, by courage, and by hope. The kind of bond that even lords could not break.